I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else. Really. Now that nothing came out about me, other than it was a conspiracy against me, literally, by Epstein and other people.
What? It is making me wonder this, though, because, a very large percentage of right-wing pundits have dedicated so much of their time to talking nonstop about Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, the chud silence is deafening right now. It's unbelievable. It's either silence or people being like, does anyone else find this boring? Do you find it boring, Matt Taibbi? Are we boring you? Sorry, did you have other things you wanted to talk to the class about? Here was a new strategy, though, and once again brought to you by Barry Weiss, CBS News, Larry Ellison. This is the Free Press. Barry Weiss is the Free Press, which has merged with Paramount. An article coming out by one Robbie to talk about, I have a provocative piece in the Free Press. Quote, will we regret the release of the Epstein files? Personally, I regret not denouncing this moral panic more fervently from the beginning. Oh, I should have called this out. For years, I sat back and watched the people who I admired, like Donald Trump Jr., go behind, what seems to be some kind of a drawer or something to pull out a small envelope that he then poured a strange substance onto a table and then said what he was about to do was called schnurgly gurgling God's taste, and then disappear for a bit, return, and then when he did, start talking about Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files and how dangerous they are and how, we have to get to the bottom of this. And then everyone else started talking about it too, right? There was Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino was talking about this quite a bit. He was real mad. Kash Patel was talking about this all the time. Holy shit, Joe Rogan, everyone just nonstop. Epstein files. This seems to be probably the number one topic that people on the internet, not just on the right, but in totality, have been going off about for the last little while. And now we finally get a bunch of evidence. And I will remind you, this is not the first dump. The last dump just happened to involve a lot of Bill Clinton shit. So all of them were like, oh, okay, yeah, fuck, told you so. That Bill Clinton sure is a child rapist. Yeah, lock him up, am I right? And the left was like, yes, for the love of fuck, get rid of that disgusting old man. But wait, what? Why all of a sudden are we switching this into SJW witch hunt of the highest order? Oh, because it's looking real bad now. Yeah, because there's not really any way to spin this, right, anymore. You can't keep pretending that things are normal when you're now aware that, yeah, the presidents of the United States may have raped children, many children. Was kind of known amongst pedophile circles for being particularly horrifying in terms of the people who did traffic and rape children. He was considered one of the worst and one of the most frightening. That's really bad. And it's not all just random phone calls or just random tips into FBI lines like the right is trying to downplay it. There's actual depositions in the Epstein files talking directly about Trump having, again, sexually abused children and potentially harmed them physically and then tried to cover it up. There's a lot of horrifying information in there. And, there's so much information in there that right now people are trying to just put the pieces together because it's like, yeah, all right, fine. They've been dumped and they've been redacted to protect the victims, is what we were hearing. Well, it turns out they actually published a lot of the photos and names of the victims, and they've redacted the names of the perpetrators, like we all said they would, because they're all guilty as fuck. You can't expect, like, the Trump administration and every single one of these people to suddenly be like, oh, yeah, hey, we're going to reveal all of this information for the first time. Yes, we will let you all know how guilty we all are. It's just been, like, covered up after covered up after covered up. Will we regret the release of the Epstein files? Personally, I regret not denouncing this moral panic more fervently from the beginning. Not joining the likes of, Richard Hanania or Michael Tracy. All the people who have exposed themselves in the last little while. Michael Tracy and Richard Hanania, both of them, they get angrier about people being like, this is fucked up, all of the child abuse, than like they do about almost any other cause. I feel like it's really what makes them, oh fuck, I have to write a Substack article about this. Excuse me, as the only adult in the room, can I just say that pedophilia is not being attracted to 15-year-olds, okay? That is not the definition of what pedophilia is. We need to be honest here. I'm going to write an entire Substack article about how a lot of your heroes throughout history have either been attracted to or married 16-year-old girls. So just so we're clear, okay, some of the most famous people throughout history, yes, I'm going to name names. I'm not abashed to say so. Jerry Seinfeld. Just like, what the fuck is... What is happening? Why are you writing Substack articles about this, you weird creeps? You weird creeps. Can you just accept that, well, technically, if we're to look at the Webster's dictionary defines pedophile, but what we're talking about here is actually ephebophilia. Like, who gives a fuck? All of it is wrong. You agree with that, right? Oh no, it's like there shouldn't be an island where teenage girls are brought to against their will to be sexually trafficked and raped. Doesn't matter if they're 15 or 12 or 5, right? You agree with that on principle? That it's still wrong if they're 14 or 15? I hope. Because if not, what the fuck are we doing here? What's the point of any of this? Like, so many people in the last 3 months or 4 months have just been like, all right, fine. Yeah, they rape kids. Yeah, okay, fine. The president rapes kids. Teenagers. Sorry, teenagers. All right. He rapes teenagers. Or he raped teenagers. He was attracted to the, what, barely legal types, Megyn Kelly? Is that it, right? Barely legal types is what she said. So, is this all that bad? The Epstein Files Transparency Act passed by the House by a vote of 427 to 1. The lone no vote was from Representative Clay Higgins, who wrote, quote, if enacted in its current form, this type of broad reveal of criminal investigative files released to a rabid media will absolutely result in innocent people being hurt. Can anyone honestly say that he was wrong? I cannot. Jeffrey Epstein was a monster, and we are well rid of him. But these files, by their nature, contain rumors and outright falsehoods. Because they are investigatory records, not established facts, we are well on our way to smearing as a pedophile anyone who had some connection to Epstein, no matter how incidental or irrelevant. I just realized this. This is why things feel so strange. We're experiencing the Me Too thing for outright pedophilia. Like, just the fact that there are not only so many revelations of people now admitting outright that they are either pedophiles, ephebophiles, or interested in having sexual relationships with teenagers, and apparently being fine with that, or thinking that society, broadly speaking, should be fine with that, and then trying to tell everybody or trying to express, well, I mean, is it really so strange? Would you think about it? And I'm like, that's why now we're getting to a point where it's like, oh, okay, so this is the post revelation of the Epstein files. Was there not some innocent people who are getting pulled into this whole thing? Like, I heard these same arguments being expressed by people who were like, has Me Too gone too far? What do you mean? Well, are innocent people not getting pulled into the Me Too? I'm sorry. Are you assuming we're all 10? That like grown men can't differentiate between, hey, by the way, as a man who has not sexually assaulted a woman, I think that's wrong, and I want to call out other men who do that, and I want to call out a culture that kind of, normalizes that, and that we should have these discussions, that they're important, and that women have had these discussions apparently for a very long time because they are more often the victims of sexual assaults by the perpetrators that are more often men in this case. We live in a society that normalizes this. This is wrong. This is bad. But you'd still get these random articles that were like, Me Too, the cost of being accused when you are innocent, and stuff like that. The real focus should be on the people who have been falsely accused at this moment in time. And of course, Robbie does provide immediately afterwards an example, I believe, of who he feels has been unfairly pulled into the Epstein files. Joanne, the Harry Potter author. Yes, otherwise known as Robert Galbraith, but J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling denies inviting Jeffrey Epstein to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child Broadway opening. The DOJ docs show that he was turned away at the door. Uh-oh. Wait. Lance, have you gone too far? You were talking a lot about this. You had some viral posts on the internet, and people have even gotten mad at you in your own circles, right? I saw that you got a viral skeet yesterday talking about how Joanne rarely, and you were talking about this yesterday, and I definitely was. It was wild for me to see that she had actually spent the majority of the day not tweeting. She really had. She had spent the majority of the day not tweeting. That's not like her, okay? She's a prolific tweeter. She's one of those people who basically she gets up in the morning, dusts the black mold off of her sheets, and then immediately runs off to grab her phone and then just starts being like, trans people, oh my God, yet another person regrets transitioning. That's basically all she does all day until she goes to sleep. It was wild that she just basically didn't tweet at all for almost over, I think, 24 hours, outside of saying that, in fact, she had never invited Jeffrey Epstein to these events. This is wild. These are lies. Not threatening to sue anyone, I might add, which, you know, is kind of like what she goes really strongly after people. If she thinks that she has a reason to be litigious and actually attack them, she'll do that real quick. But no, that was weird that she was just basically radio silent. But don't worry. After some time, she did return to tweeting, and you'll never guess what about. Trans people. Yeah, she has tweeted again now. She went from her Jeffrey Epstein tweet to a tweet about a detransitioner and the horrors of detransitioning. So she's back at it. But this is unusual, right? Because I heard people saying also, she didn't technically invite Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, wait, this goes too far. I got to be honest. So Peggy reaches out to her team, all right, and her team does grant a VIP ticket, of which does exist, and there is a photo of that ticket to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, the premiere of the Broadway play. This was an exclusive invite, very hard to get, by the way. And just like, let's not downplay that. This is not something that the everyday person has access to. Even me, you know, as the world's foremost Canadian political internet celebrity that does Alex Jones impressions, I can't just randomly be like, hey, by the way, I want to go to a Broadway premiere of a play. Get me a ticket. I can't do that, you know. I don't have that power. I will not get a reply from the email. So to get that ticket alone, that is difficult to do, all right? But I'm just going to throw this out there. There has been this idea that, hey, by the way, is this really that bad? Because they turned him down. There's an email that was leaked that shows they turned down Jeffrey Epstein because he's an evil man. So this is fucked up. And then Robbie goes on to say, a desperate attempt to smear J.K. Rowling fails, but at what cost? We are now at the point where every single notable person has to comb through their events guest lists for the last 2 decades to make sure they were never invited, interact with, or happened to encounter a person who was desperately trying to attach himself to fame. Ugh, you know, I mean, at this point, come on. You know, that's all he wanted. He was just a little small bean who was trying to hang out with rich and famous people. And how were they supposed to know? Their attempts to defend themselves take the former of X denies Epstein connection in the media, which sounds rather like they are denying something true rather than, in this case, correcting something false. And you still say this isn't a witch hunt. Please. So let's be clear about a couple things, because I do have the emails in question, and I was talking about them yesterday, and I have been obviously quite preoccupied with the fact that it's pretty unusual for, again, this to have occurred in the first place. So let's get back at some of the evidence here, okay? J.K. Rowling had said, "This is beyond silly. Neither I nor anybody on my team ever met, communicated with, or invited Jeffrey Epstein to anything." This is a very, very firm sentence, right? Like there's no way to misinterpret this, all right? This is beyond silly. She has never met, her team has never met, communicated, or invited Jeffrey Epstein to anything. Now that's a lie. We know that's a lie because Jeffrey Epstein was personally invited, and we have evidence of that, to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, parts 1 and 2, the Broadway play. Part 1 began at 1:30 p.m. Part 2 begins at 7 p.m. Full day affair. But hey, for I know rich and famous people doesn't really make a big deal. And this was the invitation that he personally received. Now again, I don't know why you'd want to just completely outright lie about something of which we do have evidence. People were still upset though, and they were like, well, is this really that bad on JK and her team? Because ultimately, I mean, like, you know, how could they have known? You know, no one really knew who he was, and you know, it's not really fair. And if no one knew who he was, or they didn't know who he was, why did they give him a ticket? I want to stress, this is not something that regular people have access to. I can't get a publicist. I don't have a publicist, but I can't get a publicist right now on the phone to call up J.K. Rowling's team and get me exclusive premiere tickets to anything I want. I can't, everyday people can't do that. And by the way, this is 2018. Wait, what are we doing here? At this point, he had already been convicted by a grand jury of soliciting prostitution from a minor. He was convicted. He was a convicted pedophile. At this point in history, this is 2018. That photo that all of you have seen a million times with like Trump, Melania, Epstein, and Guillen, that's from the year 2000. That's how far back all of this goes. That picture, are you trying to tell me at this moment, this was just an innocent, absolutely 100% innocent, there is a direct line of the team, Peggy, reaching out to J.K. Rowling's team, asking to get a ticket for Jeffrey Epstein, and then them providing a ticket for Jeffrey Epstein. But I hear you say again, they turned him away at the door. No, you know what they did? They never gave him a +1. If we were to open the email itself, what Peggy gets really mad about and why there was a problem, to whom it may concern, what was not clear. I was very explicit with my staff about 2 tickets for dinner with Jeffrey Epstein. What genius filled the ticket order? Why wasn't his name on the dinner list at the door? What genius thought my friend would not have a +1 when we ordered 2 tickets? What robot at the door would not let him in? This has ruined what was a perfect evening for all of us. I'm incredibly embarrassed by the rigid behavior of some child-minded door guard. Jeffrey is a captain of international finance and a close personal friend of mine. I know this was not done on purpose, okay, but it's still terribly upsetting. Please find out who did this and send an apology note. Thank you so much. Jeffrey, of all the nights, I left my 2 phones home. I was actually looking for you all night. I was with Sun Yi, and she thought you were having dinner with her husband. I'm so very sorry. What a screw up. So, again, you know, this, yeah, we already know Peggy is like all over the Epstein files. You know, we're not here to, you know, re-incriminate Peggy and all that kind of stuff. But it does, this is not a heroic story, okay, of J.K. Rowling and her team accidentally inviting a convicted pedophile to a children's play, after which, learning that they'd invited a convicted pedophile to a children's play, they valiantly rejected him at the door, the heroes of the evening. What are you talking about? Every single time you start crafting a narrative here, you're contradicting yourself. So wait, did they realize that they had invited a notable convicted pedophile to a children's play where children were going to be present? Did they, at the last second, and then told no one ever about this incident ever occurring? Even in the height of Epstein dominating international news every single day, this just never came up. It was just, oh yeah, that was pretty wild. Probably should tell that story. No? Oh, yeah, I can understand why, because it would look kind of weird if it came out that the issue was not, oh, we're going to reject that notable human trafficking pedophile from our children's play because we're so valiant and noble. It was that it was just assumed you would have given him a +1 and you didn't. I guess it was implied from the prior email. He should have been given a +1. What the fuck was wrong with you? Can I get the name of the friend who would have him on the door in case he loses or forgets his passes? Please deal with Jeffrey Epstein's assistant. She will send a messenger to pick up his 2. Gotta be clear. They did say 2. They did say 2. Y'all fucked up. JK, y'all fucked up. There was supposed to be 2 dinner tickets. Thank you so much. XOXO. Man, imagine that, you know. You were supposed to have 2 passes to this Broadway play, but you only had 1, and then you had to leave. You had to go. I'm becoming, do you not know who I am? Come on, I'm Jeffrey Epstein. So that's Robbie. That's his current opinion.
What do you want?
On the Epstein files, you talked about Democrats who were in there. Elon Musk was also in there, and so was your Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and correspondence that he had with him. Did you read those?
That's a lot of people. It's a lot of people in the inner circle, and we're not really just getting started here.
Those new files that were published by the Department of Justice?
I have a lot of things I'm doing, you know, a lot of things I'm doing. I don't know. You mentioned 2 names. I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure they're fine. Otherwise, it would have been major headlines.
A lot of women who are survivors of Epstein's are unhappy with those redactions that came out. Some of them, entire witness interviews are totally blacked out. Do you think that they should be more
transparent? The fact
transparent?
that they thought they released too much. I heard that, and you tell me something else. No. I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else. Really. Now that nothing came out about me, other than it was a conspiracy against me, literally, by Epstein and other people.
What?
But I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto something.
Like, we're at the point now where politicians are feeling confident enough, finally, coming forward and saying things like, hey, there's information in here, not just anonymous calls, which is what the right is downplaying, by the way. The anonymous calls aspect, they've been doing this entire thing where it's like, hey, by the way, anonymous calls, that doesn't count. We don't need to talk about that. Those are unverified. Anyone can call into the FBI. What about the sworn affidavit that's in there, which is bringing up, like, that's what people are talking about publicly now on C-SPAN.
So why are Republicans so interested in Bill and Hillary Clinton? It's because they're trying to distract from the fact that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing allegations of Donald Trump raping children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I encourage your press to go look at these allegations. And I'm highly disturbed that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just got the law wrong. Yesterday, he said, essentially, that it is not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, that's actually not correct. If Jeffrey Epstein was human trafficking minors for these sex parties, and you show up and patronize the establishment at that party, yes, you're guilty, because patronize...
I can't believe it needs to be said out loud. Robbie, did you look this up? Are you going to put that in the Free Press? Are you going to talk about this at all? And like the levels of grotesquerie we're talking about here? I've seen like there's a variety of strategies, right? There's basically the kind of Matt Walsh, I want to talk about anything else. Can we please talk about trans people? Let's really ignore this. We're going to talk about Joe Rogan's in a couple seconds where he's like, well, I have to talk about the Epstein files, but let's just talk about Bill Gates. Let's talk about the Bill Gates angle because I mean, this looks really bad for Bill Gates. I agree. Fuck Bill Gates, but also Trump, right? Because it looks really bad for Trump as well. It looks bad for everyone involved in this in some capacity. And yeah, we can differentiate based on the evidence and the information that comes out who was involved in what and accuse them respectively for that, right? No one is saying J.K. Rowling traveled to Epstein Island to abuse children. No one is saying that. No one is. Even the people who hate her absolutely despise her. They're saying it's really fucked up that someone who professes to care about children, about feminism, about protecting women, about protecting children would actually invite one of the world's most notorious pedophiles to a child's play after he was a convicted pedophile. That is a valid concern to say out loud. And guess what? That's different than guess what Elon Musk did. Elon Musk tried to tell everyone he didn't really have a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, that he never went to the island, when there are emails of him fucking almost begging on his knees to go to the island. I don't think there's any other person in this story who was more desperate to go to Epstein Island on numerous different occasions. On one like email, it's like Christmas morning at 7 a.m. And he's like, oh, my fucking kids, I don't want them there. I need to go to the island when it's not going to be normal. I need the most debaucherous party possible. I'm talking depravity, all right? Girls for the win. Big Chungus. Sending that shit. Like, Jesus Christ.
Thing is part of the law, the federal sex trafficking law. So Deputy General Todd Blanche just got that wrong, which maybe explains why they aren't investigating all these folks, including Donald Trump.
No, it's because, let's be real, there's so many Democrats involved in this too, and it doesn't even have to be Democratic politicians or your big fave, right? If you want to, for some reason, keep protecting the Clintons, like the Democrats just can't let the Clintons go. There's someone else at some level who is going to be benefactor, a lobbyist, maybe a funder, a campaign funder, a key ally, a strategic ally, maybe a diplomat from another country. At a certain point, it's going to find itself connected back to you because there are so many rich and powerful people who were either frequenting Epstein's island or knew Epstein personally and were doing business with Epstein on a very large scale. So no matter how you look at it, the truth would have to come out that the Democrats have ignored this intentionally for a long time because they're very dirty as well. And this looks horrifying on them as well. And the reality is now that you live in a society where someone who may have raped, trafficked, and potentially harmed or killed children is the president of the United States. And that's like a really fucked up reality because it's like that's an indictment of the human race on a very bad scale. We can do something about it, though, is the other thing, right? Like, it doesn't just have to be like, that's our story. Earth was wild. Oh, yes, Patel. He's got an update for all of can't even speak. But Patel's basically, he's back to talk about the Epstein files.
Is the FBI director Kash Patel?
No one
Thanks for being here.
Great to be
is
with you, Brad.
better
I wanna
to
talk
tell
about
us the
stats.
truth.
I want to talk about all
than
of the
cash
efforts
money.
that you're doing. I'd like to do a lightning
Speed it
round
up
of other
because-
topics that we're covering.
Absolutely.
First of
Gives
all,
them
we
more
just heard that
powers.
report out of Arizona about Nancy Guthrie. You all are involved in that case. Is that correct?
Yeah, Brett, with any missing persons, what you want to do is what the sheriff said, find them and put all law enforcement on that X. And the sheriff and the state and local authorities are leading that effort, and the FBI has provided all resources required.
That's not Epstein files. You got to get to it. Tulsi Gabbard.
Element to this?
All I can speak to is the FBI is always congratulatory of their efforts. And so to hear from the commander-in-chief for my troops on the ground there was a pretty cool thing.
Apparently Tulsi Gabbard is involved in a scandal that is so bad, but we don't have all the information regarding it yet because it's like something that hasn't been leaked. But the people who do know about it are saying like, this is worse than Watergate. And I'm like, what? It's probably going to get buried like everything else. There's not too many stories to talk about today.
And we were pleased to hear the president come in and say, thank you for what you're doing. That is maybe unusual from prior administrations, but I take it every chance I get to thank the men and women in law enforcement.
And
Multiple court ceilings.
Yeah, what a fucking puff piece.
Gotten there faster? I'm not really sure because of numerous court cases, multiple protective orders, multiple court ceilings. And so now we've produced everything we can while protecting victims' rights and
do you
law.
think that it gets to someplace? Does it get to some kind of charges that we don't yet know about?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. This FBI, as we'll talk about shortly, has done a record year in protecting and going after those that prey on children and sex traffic. And we have always said, as the Attorney General has always said, if there's any facts or any information about an ongoing matter, please let us know. We will fully investigate it. But I want to remind your audience, the materials that were released were from search warrants from 2007, 8, and earlier. And they were strictly confined to certain parameters by those that ran the investigation then. So that's what was collected. We, and not just my FBI, 3 other FBIs have looked into that material to see if there's any leads, to produce any investigatory leads
How
to
many FBIs do y'all
prosecute
have?
anyone. And we have exhausted that, but we are always open to new information based on the release.
You told me when we last talked, this is 8 months ago when we did an interview at the FBI in Quantico, that you were convinced that Epstein killed himself in jail. Today, 8 months after that, are you still convinced?
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
It really depends on your position, right? When you're a YouTuber and a podcaster, without any doubt, complete 100% certainty, Epstein didn't kill himself. And it's like, oh, okay, all right, you're confident about that. Also, when he's just starting to get into the inner fold, he's just talking nonstop about there is a client list, a black book. Day 1, black book release. He's going on Joe Rogan's podcast like, Joe, come on, you know me, you can trust me. Would I lie to you? Would I lie to the American people? Yes, Cash. I think you did it professionally before you joined the FBI. Now that you joined the FBI, it's just really funny because you're so bad at everything you do. It's quite comical, actually.
Thank you so much to our patrons for making this show possible. We could not fund it without you. And if you want to join, please check out patreon.com/theserfs to unlock bonus episodes, uncensored content, and all the good stuff. Thanks to Anna Loves Riley, Addercap, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hegbard Salim, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet One 85, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Tigwick, and Words Greenwood.